It's Monday. It's time to talk about Worst of the Week. And to be fair, we should be talking about Hawk Girl #2 from Jadzia Axelrod, but we already reviewed the first issue, and I didn't want to treat Doc that poorly. So this week we're going to review Night Terrors Punchline #2. Danny Lore in the house. How you doing, Doc?
I slept very well last night, but then I read this, and as soon as I woke up, and I'm pretty sure it ruined my day. So thanks for that.
You can thank Danny Lore for that, for writing this terrible comic book. Like I said, probably not the worst day of the week, but certainly bad enough that we should talk about it here. And it feels like the final nail in the coffin for the Punchline character, obviously created by James Tynion during his Batman run. He couldn't use Harley Quinn, so he created his own version of Harley Quinn. Striking look to the character, very popular right off the bat. People were really interested in this character. Then they give his girlfriend at the time, I don't remember her name, like a backup story in his Joker series about Punchline. They leave, and then it goes, I believe, to Matthew Rosenberg. The character then goes to Tini Howard, and now it's fallen all the way down to Danny Lore. I guess it could fall lower than that, but at this point, you basically destroyed the character by all intents and purposes by putting so many bad creators on the character.
Yeah, I mean, literally at this point, the only person worse that you could add on to it would be T. Franklin. This issue was pretty bad, and I feel like this is the only thing that you can really use Punchline for at this point, which is weird, lame meta commentary on how much the internet doesn't bother you while writing and dedicating an entire 22 pages. And I'm assuming the first 22 pages from issue #1 as well.
Here's the weird thing. I don't feel like it was about Punchline, though. It was about Danny Lore's insecurities with people calling her out on the internet and trying to claim that she doesn't care.
There is no character. It's an empty vessel in which for the writer to fill with whatever their personal baggage is. And in Danny Lore's case, it's how the internet's terrible, fanboys suck.
And she's a girl. She's girl power. She's above it all.
Yeah, exactly. And you wrote 22 pages screeching, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. Methinks thou doth protest too much. I'm leaning towards, if you need to come out and tell us you don't care about what's said about you on the internet, probably a pretty good indication you care. All
right, let's get into this comic book and talk about it. The first thing we will talk about is the art from Lucas Meyer, which actually is pretty decent, like way better than this comic book deserved. There's one page in particular where you have Punchline falling down with like robotic Batgirl or whatever that I thought was quite artistic. It had a black, like empty void background to it, and I thought it was a really good interpretation of the scene. Certainly the best you could do with the bad material that he had.
Since the majority of this comic was written with kind of an intentionally 2D background where she's fighting on the internet, basically Twitter, and the other time where you mentioned where she's fighting in like a 0D background where it's just a void. He didn't have a lot of opportunity to explore like camera angles and perspective that he could use, but he did a rather admirable job with within the limitations of the story. He did a pretty good job changing up angles so it wasn't just a bunch of flat angle bullshit. He zoomed in, zoomed out. I liked the art. I mean, there was a couple of pages that felt a little wonky. I thought it was very good. So no complaints on the art, really.
No, the art is very, very good. The problem is the story and the premise itself. This is supposed to be Insomnia, the new big DC villain for Night Terrors, tormenting Punchline as she's sleeping with her worst nightmare. And her worst nightmare is the internet. Yep. I do think there's probably some potential to this idea, exploring that, like maybe people stop listening to you. They don't care what you say anymore, because she is a renowned podcaster, I guess, in the DC Comics universe. Or maybe your family starts hearing what people are saying about you on the internet and it turns them against you. Like that could be a fear or something. I don't think there was a lot of potential with this particular idea as far as her biggest nightmare, but this was the lamest, most boring way to do it. And I think that it really did a disservice to the character. She's just scared of the internet.
You can't simultaneously tell us I don't care while having the premise of the book being everybody ends up in their worst nightmare. If you don't care, it's not your worst nightmare. It's just that simple. Okay, fine. You wanna vent and just bitch about the internet, and that's whatever. But at the same time, just screaming, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care anymore is not a good way to defeat that scenario, that nightmare scenario that she's in. I was just waiting for you to start calling people incel too. There's a lot of meta commentary again on, well, this block button, it doesn't work. Oh my God, it's so hard to press. It feels like a ton of bricks. But I can pull off this reply button and start hitting you with it. Wait, when I hit you with the reply button, it just means you split into two. And you're all a bunch of NPCs that just want to drown me. And I feel like I'm suffocating. Jesus fucking Christ. You're not original with this take. This is the most paint by numbers attempt at an analogy. You were so on the nose here. Creativity just gets thrown out the window.
It gets even worse somehow when Insomnia shows up. I mean, I don't think Danny Lore does Insomnia any justice whatsoever. This is supposed to be a big, powerful villain and comes off as just a punchline to Punchline herself. You got to hear this dialogue. Punchline says, I've seen better cosplayers. I'm not bothered. He replies, you keep saying you're not bothered. You're not triggered. Why would I be? This is obviously some weird gas or drug or illusion. If that's true, why are you still here? I've just got to outlast it, let it wear off, and then, or maybe you're here with me because you can't turn this video off. You can make me sound like one of those terminally online losers who spend all day talking about me. Oh, right, you're in control. Nothing that happens here or IRL matters. It's all meaningless. You're just being one big old troll. But we both know that's a lie. Get off your high horse. Who are you? Some Arkham shrink? One of the bats? Shh. Sit with the truth a minute. I can't speak, and he turns off her ability to speak to people.
Look, to be perfectly honest, Danny Lore, Vita Ayala, all of those creators that are basically the same, they all have the same mentality of like a 13-year-old boy on Call of Duty. The dialogue gets it significantly better from there because, well, you just have a couple of pages with empty word bubbles. So that is
the best thing about the comic book, that you bring
Yeah.
that up, Doc, is there actually isn't that much dialogue. On most of the pages, it's her like standing in front of a screen, maybe saying two words, and then you're on to the next page.
And they gave us 3 or 4 pages with empty word bubbles, which I am good with. Yeah, that was actually the best written dialogue. Maybe next time, just do the entire book with just empty word bubbles. We can add in our own dialogue. It's really not surprising that in this book, Danny turns Insomnia into basically a 13-year-old in a Call of Duty lobby. I was kind of amused at the fact that it looked like Bridget Nielsen wearing Mad Max makeup. Insomnia had tits there, so I'm really confused. I guess it's supposed to be Punchline, but with Insomnia's face on it.
Yeah, it doesn't really go very well. I mean, she defeats Insomnia very, very easily, and I was like, well, I guess the villain's not very powerful. And then the worst part of the introspection, I guess, the really worst part of the meta stuff, because it's even worse than what Insomnia was saying. Punchline thinks, I get the prank now. Whoever you are, you wanted to convince me that I cared, huh? That I was one of those forum losers obsessing over every word, every picture, every decision. Tried to kill me with caring about their opinions, but it's the nonsense of nightmares, meaningless. Judging them isn't the same as caring what they think. And if this really was your world, then something else is said. Basically try to convince people, probably herself, that she doesn't care what people said. But if she didn't care what people said, Punchline would be fighting a real villain or have a real nightmare scenario in here, and it wouldn't be Danny Lore's nightmare scenario.
If you didn't actually care, and the whole thing was some sort of proof that you didn't care, then it wouldn't have been your nightmare scenario. Like, she was going through therapy through writing the issue, and for Punchline being in the issue. And that's how she was able to suddenly press the red X at the top of the YouTube video and escape the nightmare.
But she's trying to say through Punchline that she doesn't care what people say about her on the internet. And because she dedicated an entire 2 issues to that, it makes me think that she actually does care. But, Danny Lore, not exactly a great writer. But this wasn't the worst thing we ever could have reviewed, Doc, because there's not a ton of dialogue, and it takes you about 8 minutes to read the damn comic book.
It did, because I got a late start reading it this morning, and I was like, oh shit, am I going to get done before I get on and meet with you? And I blew through it with like 10 minutes to spare. I'm like, oh shit, I'm normally used to giving like 25 minutes for some of the garbage that you make me read.
This character had a whole lot of potential to be a big star, somebody that could really transcend comic books and be something in animation, video games, movies, television, stuff like that. But at this point, the character is going nowhere, and you basically hit the bottom of the barrel with Danny Lore. Whatever. Punchline was a good idea, was pretty hot there for a minute. Now she goes the way of Yara Flor and some of the other heroes we've heard about lately that basically are meaningless now.
Yeah, while she did have some, that popularity out the gate, I'm just sitting there going, why is everybody getting so so hung up on dollar store purple Harley Quinn? And you know what? DC's made it perfectly clear that they are now treating her like dollar store purple Harley Quinn.
There was a time when it seemed like DC and Marvel really thought Danny Lore was going places. They were putting her into position, be one of their big up-and-coming stars. It turned out that was a little bit premature. If you remember, they put her on Champions, and this was going to be like the big breakout for Danny Lore. Actually broke it all down here and explained why Danny Lore was not a talent then. And if you notice, a lot of the problems that she had with Champions, she also has in Punchline. Really bad comic book writer. There's also a link in the video description.